Welcome back to Well, That's Interesting, the Wow, I'm so glad they looked inside these things edition. Today is episode 280. Hummingbirds drink the alcohol equivalent of a beer each day, and an ancient snake was discovered in a drawer, and it's officially weird. My friends, what a day is today. We reached the luxurious, ample episode number of 280, and I can't think of a better way to celebrate than not with one, but two discoveries that contain a genuine surprise in their creamy middles. But before we get into teeny birds hitting the booze and a snake that doesn't make any goddamn sense, I want to take a moment and say thank you. Thanks to you tuning in every week, rating, subscribing, following, dropping a comment on the socials, telling your friends about teeny birds hitting the booze and a snake that doesn't make any goddamn sense. Thanks to you, the flock has grown to 4,000 subscribers on Spotify alone, and we are on our way to 300 episodes. These gestures may be small, but they work. So thank you. Thank you for continuing to support the show. I lift my glass to you. And by glass, I really mean a flower that just so happens to be laced with a smidge of alcohol. Which brings me to the first half of the show. My friends, I ask, how many bird feeders do you own? 7? So do I. And 2 of them just so happen to be hummingbird feeders. Now, if you also play barkeep, serving up that sweet, sweet, simple syrup to these creatures, then the following introduction should not come as a shock. But if hummingbirds are not a part of your life, buckle up, because the dainty, angelic bird you think they are is about to be torn to pieces in the best possible way. Let's start with their bodies, which itself contains a number of surprising engineering marvels seen in no other bird, and honestly most other animals. Now, the word small comes to mind when thinking of their size, and rightfully so. They are among the tiniest on the planet, and the record for the weest one of all goes to the aptly named bee hummingbird, who only measures 2¼ inches long and weighs the same as about a dime. I know. But, and big but here, a hummingbird's brain makes up about 4.2% of its body weight. This is the largest percentage in the entire wild bird group, and to put that impressive heft into perspective, the average adult human brain typically accounts for approximately 2% of a person's total body weight. Hummingbird, again, 4.2%. As such, their ability to remember is award-winning. They visit between 1,000 to 2,000 flowers a day on specific days because they know how long it takes for a certain flower to refill its nectar. To reach all of these flowers, our little lightning bolts can fly up to 40 miles per hour, which is so damn impressive that if you cruise at that speed for about 18 to 20 hours, you can cross the Gulf of Mexico, just like the ruby-throated hummingbird does twice a year. So, how in God's name do they have the energy to fuel their flights, beat their wings on average 50 times a second, and pump their heart 1,200 beats per minute? Easy. They consume between 50% and 150% of their entire body weight in nectar every day. And according to Zach Hutchinson, a community naturalist at Audubon Rockies, they also snatch spiders and tiny insects using their long beaks as chopsticks, just like Mr. Miyagi. Needless to say, living this fast, this quickly, burns through enormous amounts of calories. According to Popular Mechanics, if the average adult human male had the same metabolism of a hummingbird, he would have to eat 285 pounds of meat every day to maintain his weight. So, again, don't let those glittery feathers fool you. They are a powerhouse that also happens to be extremely territorial. They will throw hands, wings, bar stools, whatever it takes. They will cross you if you cross them, turning those chopsticks into switchblades. The only thing these birds can't do is walk. That's right, their feet have evolved to be as faint as possible so they can only perch, bathe, and itch with them. But honestly, who gives a fuck about walking when you're the only bird that can fly backwards and upside down? What I mean to say, in this very lengthy intro, is that hummingbirds are shocking. And the new study we're about to fly into reveals their badassery remains unchallenged and maybe even a little enabled. Thanks to a curious group of biologists from the University of California, Berkeley, we now know that of the thousands of flowers a hummingbird visits, hundreds of them contain trace amounts of ethanol. And if that sounds like a lot of sips of booze, you are right. Proportionally, that's the equivalent of a 154-pound human knocking back a glass of wine or beer in an afternoon. But I'm getting very ahead of myself. We will meet the Hot for Hummers team, whose obsession began during the COVID-19 lockdown. We will start with their simple hummingbird feeder experiment and end with testing dozens of flowers around campus. All to answer some pretty wild questions like, how do flowers become microbreweries? Are they bribing these birds with alcohol to pollinate? Are hummingbirds flying under the influence? And how do you even test for alcohol in a bird anyway? All of this and more shall be revealed. Then after the break, we are leaving sunny California for Hortle Cliff on England's southern coast, where in 1981, the backbones of an ancient snake were uncovered, but subsequently tucked away within the drawers of London's Natural History Museum, and there they were left, untouched, for decades. That is, until a man with his own obsessions finally appeared, Dr. Yorios Yorgalis, whose name alone sounds like an ancient species, but no, he's from the Institute of Systematics and Evolution of Animals of the Polish Academy of Sciences in Krakow, and it's been his life's goal to rummage through the drawers of this museum. It's true, I'm not exaggerating. In an interview with James Ashworth of the Natural History Museum, Dr. G confessed, quote, "It was my childhood dream to be able to visit the museum, let alone do research here. So when I saw these very weird vertebrae in the collection and knew that they were something new, it was a fantastic feeling." End quote. Oh yes, we will finger the bones Dr. G so gleefully handled. We will carbon date them back to a time when millions of years ago, England was a delightful hot rock for snakes and other cold-blooded creatures. We will puzzle these few bones back together, and then we will take a few steps back to reveal something literally bizarre. This just might be the earliest ancestor of a type of aquatic snake living in Southeast Asia and Australia today. And we will meet them. And we will figure out how in the holy hell a snake from England gets to Australia. The answer will move you. In the meantime, hi, I'm Jill Chacha, and if this is your first time listening, welcome to the flock, my mysterious business goose. To begin, please take a moment to mix, pour, pop, or crack open your favorite beverage of choice because you and I are about to bond with the hummingbirds and flowers amongst us. This beautiful moment is actually brought to us thanks to one of the most depressing events in recent history, which is saying something, and I probably need to narrow that down. So please, take a generous gulp and join me, will you? A few inches outside the office window of biologist Robert Dudley, a professor and researcher at the University of California, Berkeley, during the worst months of the COVID pandemic in 2020. In relatable fashion, to endure these unprecedented times, Robert leaned heavily into the things he loved: birds and alcohol. Not as separate pastimes, no, but rather as a joint endeavor. Here's what I mean. As reported in a 2023 UC Berkeley press release, Robert, quote, has been obsessed with alcohol use and misuse for years, and in a 2014 book, The Drunken Monkey and Why We Drink and Abuse Alcohol, presented evidence that humans' attractions to alcohol is an evolutionary adaptation to improve survival among primates. Only with the coming of industrial alcohol production has our attraction turned, in many cases, into alcohol abuse. He asked, why do humans drink alcohol at all, as opposed to vinegar or any of the other 10 million organic compounds out there? And why do most humans actually metabolize it, burn it, and use it pretty effectively, often in conjunction with food, but then some humans also consume it to excess? I think, to get a better understanding of human attraction to alcohol, we really have to have better animal model systems, but also a realization that the natural availability of ethanol is actually substantial. Not just for primates that are feeding on fruit and nectar, but also for a whole bunch of other birds and mammals and insects that are also feeding on flowers and fruits. The comparative biology of ethanol consumption may yield insight into modern-day patterns of consumption and abuse by humans. End quote. That's right, everybody. Robert is not only a nerd, but a nerd hot for the history of and biological cravings for booze. And also birds and their relationship to it. Which means isolation and the quarantine will not put a stop to his insatiable quest. Okay. Yes, his original plans to test these questions in the wilds of Central America and Africa, where there are nectar-feeding sunbirds, that had been put on indefinite hold. But outside his window, right the fuck now, is a 350 milliliter hummingbird feeder. And that will have to do. In conjunction with a group of student researchers standing 6 feet apart, Robert and the gang came up with a simple but remarkable experiment. If alcohol is present, will they drink it? And if so, do they have a preference? After enticing 3 adult male Anna's hummingbirds with our average feeder here, they were captured and housed individually in their own plexiglass apartment for a month, which you can enjoy peeping into with your free hand if you pick up your phone and tap on today's post over at the old socials. There you will see a photo of one of these green luminous birds perched between 2 10-milliliter syringes capped with a white plastic flower. One of these is our control, containing a standard mixture of simple syrup, while the other, well, that one's going to be filled with a sucrose solution that contains either 1 or 2% ethanol. So it's a tiny bar, if you will, for tiny patrons that, like any fashionable pop-up, will appear at random with no discernible signage. Here's what I mean. According to the study, aptly titled, Hummingbird Ingestion of Low-Concentration Ethanol Within Artificial Nectar, quote, experimental trials consisted of exposing each bird, on different days, to a randomly sequenced pair of either 0%, 1 or 2% ethanol solution, such that all pairwise combinations, i.e. 0 versus 1, 1 versus 2%, and 0 versus 2%, completed one experimental series. Each series also included a baseline comparison between 2 0% ethanol solutions for a total of 4 pairwise comparisons. The full experimental series was then repeated twice per bird over a period of 3 to 4 weeks for a total of 3 series. End quote. My God. So, after all the pop-ups were popped up and all the imbibing was to be had and rounds filled and refilled and measurements were taken, what did the team find? Drumroll, please. Thank you in the back. I am oh so happy to report that the hummingbirds consumed nectar from each of the 0, 1, and 2% ethanol solutions, but they did certainly have a preference. 1% ABV was consumed just as much as ethanol-free or the 0% ABV solutions, so they very much wet their whistle. But when offered 2%, get this, they actually consumed half the average amount of volume they normally would, which means they are flying responsibly. Quote, they're consuming the same total amount of ethanol, but they're just reducing the volume of the ingested 2% solution. So that was really interesting. That was kind of a threshold effect, and that suggested to us that whatever's out there in the real world, it's probably not exceeding 1.5%, end quote, Robert said in the 2023 UC Berkeley press release. So, yes, my tantalizing business goose, this study was not only the first demonstration of ethanol consumption by birds, but that hummingbirds know when to say when. They will imbibe, but the instinctual ABV cutoff seems to be around 1%. So the question is, what exactly is nature serving up out there in the wild? Although still facing the pandemic, the team continued their investigation, and they did so by returning to their trusty feeder outside Robert's office. As reported by UC Berkeley News, when he and his colleagues tested the alcohol level in that sugar water which sat in the feeder for 2 weeks, undisturbed, they found that it contained about 0.05% ethanol by volume. So it got a smidge boozy. And at this point, you may be thinking, how did it get there? How did alcohol so magically appear? Well, I'm so glad you asked. The fucking air, bro. Water and sugar is the perfect breeding ground for microbes like yeast, which can be carried by the wind, or it can hitch a ride on a pollinator. Either way, upon landing inside this feeder, or a flower, rather, fermentation begins. But Robert and the gang could only wait for humans to get their act together and for the pandemic to subside subside before moving on to the next step of their scrumptious experimentation. That is, measuring just how much ethanol is naturally found in flowers and determining how frequently it's being consumed by birds. Well, join me now, will you? 2 goddamn years later, when in 2022, Robert Dudley reassembled his nerdy Marvel team, including doctoral students Alexi Moro, Amon Coral, and study co-authors Rory Bowie and Jimmy McGuire, both UCB professors of integrative biology and curators in the campus's Museum of Vertebrate Zoology. On what I can only assume were glorious sunny days in April, July, and August, Alexi and Amon skipped through the fields of UCB's botanical garden, extracting nectar from plants that the local native hummingbirds just cannot resist, including Malva asurgentiflora. Ooh, I nailed it. With its 5 red or dark pink rectangular petals marked with vertical lines of a deeper shade. It's just gorgeous. Also breathtaking is the photo of Alexi giving a good old swab to a pink crinodona lily over on today's post. Check it out. Great form, Alexi. Anyway, at the end of that gleeful time of being out and about, 147 samples of nectar from 29 species of flowering plants were obtained, and the testing for booze could begin. Quote, in the first ever broad analysis of the alcohol content of flower nectars, University of California, Berkeley biologists found detectable alcohol in at least one flower of 26 of the 29 species of plants tested. While most samples had very low levels, almost certainly from yeast fermenting the sugars in the nectar, one contained 0.056% ethanol by weight, or about 1/10 proof, end quote, from a March 2026 UCB News press release. Y'all, I will say that again. At least one flower in 26 of 29 plants had booze in it. And according to the team, the levels of ethanol in those flowers ranged from 0.016% to 0.056%, which is a tad higher than Robert's feeder from back in the day. So the question now is, are our local birds barflies? Yes. Yes, of course they are. In fact, it turns out most nectar feeders are. In a separate study whimsically titled, "The Proof is in the Plumage," yeah, I'm a nerd too, that one got me, a method for detecting dietary ethanol exposure in birds by testing for ethyl glucuronide in feathers. Yes, feathers. Feathers were obtained from 64 specimens at the Museum of Vertebrate Zoology at UCB. And those specimens, those species, I haven't been drinking, I swear. They were not only from California, but Nevada, Arizona, Oregon, and New Jersey. The team here, including lead author Cynthia Wang Claypool, a former graduate student of UCB, by the way, they were looking for a metabolic byproduct of ethanol called ethyl glucuronide to confirm ethanol ingestion. And guess what? A total of 40 of 64 individual birds, 40 out of 64, conclusively tested positive, including our old buddy Anna's hummingbird and the black-chinned hummingbird as well, another California favorite. So, now that we know for sure wild hummingbirds are bellying up to the bar, we must ask, what is it doing to their tiny bodies? The answer? Not much, which is actually kind of crazy. After doing some clickety-clack calculations to figure out the daily alcohol consumption of Anna's hummingbird based on its estimated caloric intake, it's possible hummers of this size could be consuming 0.19 to 0.27 grams of alcohol per kilogram of body weight when feeding on flowers native to their habitats, which is basically just a fancy way of saying that this is comparable to a human having one standard alcoholic drink per day. But, and big but here, these flying furnaces burn alcohol and metabolize it so quickly they're probably not seeing any significant impairment. As Robert so elegantly put it, quote, they're not getting drunk, end quote. So, is it all just a simple coincidence that yeast just happens to end up right where hummingbirds feed? and there's no real purpose or effect? Well, my inebriated business goose, that's the next investigation. Continuing from Robert's elegant statement, quote, maybe there are other physiological detoxification pathways, or other kinds of nutritional effects of ethanol for animals that are consuming it every day of their lives. That's the interesting thing. This is chronic through the course of the day, but that's a lifetime exposure post-weaning. It just means that the comparative biology of ethanol ingestion deserves further study, end quote. So, hold onto your glass, folks. I have a feeling hummingbirds have something else up their wings. After the break, we are leaving the west coast of the U.S. for the southern coast of England, across the pond. And we're leaving aerial animals for aquatic ones. Possibly. On a cliff known for ancient fossils, one has finally been examined after 40 years since its discovery. And it turns out, it may just be the ancestor of some of the most infamous snakes on Earth today. A mystery is next. Stay tuned.
Wishing you could be there live for the big game, soaking up the atmosphere of the crowd? But too often, life gets busy, or the price holds you back. Priceline is here to help you make it happen. With millions of deals on flights, hotels, and rental cars, you can go see the game live. Don't just dream about the trip, book it with Priceline. Download the Priceline app or visit Priceline.com. Actual prices may vary. Limited time offer.
This episode is brought to you by Netflix. The Four Seasons is back for Season 2, starring Tina Fey, Will Forte, Coleman Domingo, Marco Calvani, Carrie Kenny Silver, and Erica Henningsen. After a difficult year, your favorite group of friends continues their tradition of vacationing together, now with a baby in tow. From the Jersey Shore to upstate New York and Italy, their getaways are sure to take unexpected turns where comedy ensues. Watch The Four Seasons May 28th, only on Netflix.
And we're back. We are so back. And my friends, I'm going to need you to dust off your finest pickaxe and to load up on as much Aquanet as you can carry, because we're squeezing into the old time machine and dialing it way the fuck back to the beginning of the end of capitalism, 1981. Yes, all things come to an end, and no better place encapsulates this fate better than Hoardle Cliff, located in Hampshire on England's south coast near Milford-on-Sea. And for my modern fellow geographically challenged Americans who are like, oh, is that the stage of capitalism we're in right now? And wait, where are we exactly? Don't worry. I can at least comfort you with these sprawling, dramatic views of Hoardle Cliff. So if you would, please, imagine England. Thank you. Point to the middle of the southern coast, and voila, that's it. Here we are standing on lush green grass overlooking steep gray cliffs that seem as though the English Channel took an ice cream scooper to the land, exposing the soft clay that makes up this coastline. The colorful beach huts and the easy access to a shingle beach below us makes this a popular spot for sun-deprived Brits. But, thanks to the delicate makeup of this place, erosion happens by the hour. And as such, since the 1800s, this place has been a beacon for fossil nerds. And not just any fossil nerds. Hoardle Cliff became a Michelin star archaeologist hotspot after Barbara Rawdon Hastings, the fossil hunting matroness of Hastings, began collecting the skulls of crocodile relatives here, followed by Sir Richard Owen, who not only named the first fossil snakes found at Hoardle, but was instrumental in establishing what's now the Natural History Museum in London, where the fossils are studied and housed. And please, if you would, put a pin in Sir Owen. We will get back to him in a minute. Oh my God. In the meantime, you may be wondering why, and how in the holy fuck can the bones of crocs and snakes be dug up here, of all places? I'm so glad you asked. Dr. Mark Jones, the Natural History Museum's curator of fossil reptiles and amphibians, who co-authored the research we're about to dig into ourselves, explained it best in a statement in the museum's November 2025 press release. Quote, Hoardle Cliff provides a window into a period of Earth's history known as the Eocene that lasted from around 56 to 34 million years ago. Around 37 million years ago, England was a much warmer place than it is now. Though the sun was slightly dimmer, levels of atmospheric carbon dioxide were much higher. England was also slightly closer to the equator, meaning that it received more heat from the sun year-round. End quote. Yes, my tan business goose. Once upon a time, England was nearly tropical. So much so, ancient cold-blooded creatures sunbathed here. And they also died here, to be exposed by the elements millions of years later and plucked by the hands of hot-for-bones nerds of the History Museum. On a fateful day, in 1981, 31 tiny vertebrae were dusted off, ogled for a moment, and then squared away to be overshadowed by quite literally larger finds, including the Pelorix, the first named constrictor snake in the fossil record, aka the ancestor of today's boas and pythons, right the fuck here. Our 31 vertebra had no chance of sharing the limelight, and as such, when it was filed away in the museum's drawers, it hadn't seen daylight until 41 years later, when an even bigger hot-for-bones nerd finally reached a pinnacle himself. My friends, do you remember lead author Dr. Yarios Yorgalis from the Institute of Systematics and Evolution of Animals of the Polish Academy of Sciences in Krakow? I brought him up at the top of the show, and from his quote, we learned since childhood he's been waiting to rummage through these drawers, fantasizing about rediscovering something big. Well, what can I say? Don't give up on your dreams or some shit, because Dr. G found these vertebra, and his wish was about to come true. My lanky business goose. 31 vertebra may sound like a lot, and it is. For perspective, we have 24 in our spine. But 31 is actually a small percentage of the total number of vertebrae in snakes, which, without a doubt, these bones belong to. By the way, snakes typically have between 200 and 400 vertebrae, though some species can have up to 600, like, you guessed it, the Australian python. My God. Anyway, back to these bones, who were finally being handled, this time by Dr. G, whose sharp eyes were making quick work of what scant clues lay before him. And if you drop whatever spine you're holding right now and pick up your phone to tap on today's post over at the socials, you can eye one of these goddamn bones right now and have it before you. You may just notice that this creature had a very large nerve canal and a strong support structure, but its shape is different from that of primitive snakes and today's modern snakes. It's somewhere in between. Did you notice that? Yes, of course you did. So did Dr. G. With a few mental clickety-clacks, Yorios figured out that this species, whatever it was probably 3 feet in length. And as to what it ate, well, that's anyone's guess, as the skull is missing, perhaps taken by the sea. To determine who this was, if known at all, we'd have to get closer, like a lot closer, and then compare these itty-bitty bits to our snake friends cataloged today. So, after running these bones under a micro-CT scanner to create 3-dimensional models of the fossils, what did he and his team find? Drumroll, please. Girl, it's like somebody stapled a bunch of today's snakes together, like a bunch of them, which means this snake, ignored for 41 years, is probably a kind of missing link. Let's get into it. As reported by James Ashworth for the Natural History Museum, the scans showed that the vertebra varied slightly in shape and size, which is expected because snake spines gradually narrow from head to tail. At the same time, they shared features across the 31 fossils, indicating that they came from a single species. But this species had a strange mix of characteristics found in different snake species today, and the most frequent recognizable characteristics closely resembled those of acrocordids. Now, who the hell are they? Buckle up. Their nickname, the elephant trunk snake, aptly describes their appearance. Their skin is loose and baggy, giving the impression of being several sizes too big for it. Although that may sound strange, there is a reason. These snakes are entirely aquatic, lurking at the bottom of rivers or streams and estuaries, waiting for fish to approach. Wearing a tight bathing suit would kind of get in the way. Acrocordids are also only found in what is today Western India and Sri Lanka, through tropical Southeast Asia to the Philippines, south to Timor, and east through New Guinea to the northern coast of Australia. However, 37 million years ago, it's quite possible the ancestor of these snakes was basking on Hortle Cliff. Not only is that wild to comprehend, but get this, acrocordids sit among the earliest branches of the Cynophydian family tree, or the modern snake family tree. So if Dr. G is correct, and this fossil, almost long forgotten, is the ancestor of these guys, well, it might just tell us more about how and when modern snakes evolved from those long extinct. So watch this space. Yurios will continue living out his childhood dream of meandering through the fossil collections here at the Natural History Museum, where he suspects other undiscovered species may be waiting, and perhaps the rest of the star of our show may be hidden. So our star, by the way, who finally has a name, is Paradoxophidian Richard Owenny, where Paradoxophidian translates from Greek to paradox snake, and Richard Owenny is in honor of, you guessed it, Sir Richard Owen, who is described by the Natural History Museum's website as, quote, a controversial figure, end quote. Oh, girl, you know if the British call you controversial, it's gotta be good. So as we wait for more news on Paradoxophidian, please enjoy this gossip. Okay, here we go. As reported by the BBC, although he's considered a brilliant comparative anatomist who coined the word dinosaur, yes, he coined the word dinosaur, he was also criticized for his immense ego, plagiarism, and creating inaccurate, cumbersome reconstructions of dinosaurs as well. He had major beef with Darwin, rumored to be fueled by jealousy, and was known to write anonymous scathing reviews of colleagues' work to bolster his public image. Also, if you ever meet Sir Owen, don't, and I say don't, let him borrow anything from you, as he was known to, quote, hold on to specimens for too long, publish on them without permission, and pass them off as his own, end quote from the BBC. Oh my God. Owen. On a positive note, he really knew how to pose with fossils. Oh my God, he really did serve. I highly recommend giving him a Google or checking out his wiki. He's giving archaeology in every photo. Goddamn. And thank you for listening, rating, subscribing, following. We've made it to episode 250, and we're going to keep going. So thank you. And a bony thanks to the folks over at Airwave Media, the podcast network to which WTI belongs. If you love this show, and you do, you love the other podcasts in this family, and please, stay interesting.